Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan, and we're back. Episode 3 of Hard Knocks has concluded like 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, and we are ready to talk about that. It's training camp reporting day for rookies, so rookies showed up in the building today. First training camp practice is next week. The dog days of summer are almost over. We almost made it, Cranky.
Oh, it's so goddamn hot here, Grump. I can't take it anymore. It is a million degrees here in the New York area. Let me ask you, Grump. They reported today they don't have their first practice the next week. What are they doing all week?
First full practice. I don't know if they do. I think like veterans can trickle in. They might do like workouts and stuff like that.
Oh, you mean the first full practice of the full team?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
believe
I'm
so.
sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you meant it's their first.
That
Their
that's
first.
that's per Jordan Renan, by the way. I didn't
Okay.
really look too in depth into
Gotcha.
everything that's going on from now until then. But yeah,
Well, it's another sign that we're getting closer to the season starting. It's like, you talk about the draft for the first half of it. Then you talk about free agency and who we drafted and projections, and we pencils and pen this thing. Now we watch Hard Knocks, but now we're actually going to be able to watch football players doing football things, putting numbers on the back of draft picks and numbers on the back of free agents. So it's just another sign we're getting closer. Whether the weather doesn't feel like it, we are actually getting closer to real football and opening day, which I think is 8 weeks away. Does that sound right?
yeah. I was
9
gonna
weeks?
say we're only a couple weeks from preseason,
Right.
which when you say that it's like, oh, big deal, but it's like that pretty close. Preseason's short now.
Yeah, and it goes even when they had the 4 games, like it went pretty fast. It was like, oh, the first game, we talk about the first game, then it's the second, third, and oh, we're at the fourth game already. We're
Yeah.
starting up in 10
This
days.
is yeah, dress rehearsal, and it's
Yeah.
also it's kind of like a way to wrap up your summer, get your final. Like I like paying attention to preseason because I like the roster building thing.
Hmm.
I like to get a glimpse into some things that we're doing, but it's not something I take super seriously. Um, I may not even watch the games live. You know what I mean?
I think last year was the first time we went to a live game, and I think in 20 something years we've had season tickets.
Did we? What game did we go to?
I felt like I went to one.
We
Didn't
might
we go to
have.
one? Yeah,
I think so.
we went to something. We left. We were bored.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Um, I did go to Barkley's. Was it 2018?
Might have been. Yeah.
That first preseason game, I took my mom. I grabbed your ticket. I took my mom. She
That's
was
right.
slow. She wanted to take a picture in front of the stadium, and we missed the first play from scrimmage. Was like a 60-yard run by Saquon Barkley.
Ouch.
We heard it as we were walking to the seats. Um, no big deal. My mom is the absolute best.
Yeah, we love her. Love her.
All right, so let's get
So,
into this
speaking of
hard knocks
Barkley,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's get the Barkley thing out of the way because I do think that this was a decently interesting episode. I think less interesting than last week, but let's just the Barkley thing is to me is the least interesting part of this episode. I think it's mainly because it was just a lot of like MTV style teasing from HBO on this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like this was very
Yeah,
much like
you needed like those Kardashian, like, when they move their head and it's like, and they just kind of do these kind of like weird like faces like every time something happens. Yeah, for sure. Well, you know what it was? It was kind of like it was anticlimactic because A, we know what's going to happen, and B, the more and more you were watching these episodes, it became very apparent that this was the course it was going to go. You saw a team that was not really gung ho about bringing him back. You see a player, through his agent and himself, who doesn't seem that really excited about coming back. So, I mean, we were headed down this road, and it was kind of anticlimactic where he just, went somewhere else.
it really was anticlimactic because the rumor mill and like the nonsense surrounding this story and what was being leaned into was that like there was this, did he offer and who did he disrespect and did he not call him back? And really at the end of the day what happened was they were, they had a starting number. He got an offer on the free agent market that was incredibly higher than that. Totally different,
Hmm.
and that was out of the price range, and it was like, well, we can't compete with that. The
I,
end.
I
Like
also
what?
feel,
Who cares? That was the most boring whatever.
well, I thought it was interesting, Joe Schoen kind of played both sides this a little bit because you could tell, he clearly didn't want Barkley back, in the negotiations and everything. But he also painted a story to Mara that seemed a little different. Like, we had this agreement, and he was going to come back to us, and they didn't. It was kind of like, it's really nebulous if there really even was really an agreement that they'd come back. I mean, definitely the way the show was edited in the end of the first episode was, we never heard the actual words, "I promise to come back with the offer I get." We heard nuance around it, but either the way they edited it or actually was said. But he came to, because he knew that Mayer wanted him back. He'd said it a couple. He kind of wandered into the office, old man style, and said, "I want him back. Kill me if he goes to Philly," and just wandered off. So he definitely was playing up the supposedness of there was a deal and they broke the deal to him to, you know,
I, I, I
got that
mean,
sense
to
totally.
some degree, but I mean, at the end of the day, he had him on the phone, wrote down the number on the board, and
Hmm.
was like, "So if I offer him that, we have a deal." And it was like, "Well, So it was like,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that sounded like right there, you already knew it wasn't going to happen. Like,
Oh, totally.
yeah, yeah. So, um, and
I
also, but I mean, on both sides of that, that also sounds like if he didn't get an offer higher than that on the market, it not, doesn't necessarily mean that he's coming back either.
I think if he would have tested the market and he had found the market to be soft, I think he'd be a Giant.
I agree, but it didn't sound committal that way. Like it really truly to me, what I walk away from this be like, it sounded like both of these people were friends of convenience, where
Yeah.
there was like
Hmm.
both people had like a 60% feeling on each other. Joe Schoen has like a six, like I understand what Barkley does for this team. He wants a lot of money, and we ended on bad terms the last time we tried to do this.
Yeah.
And Barkley was like, I want, I understand, given my age, my talent, and my injury history, this is probably my best shot to make money now. And
100%.
if
Hmm.
the best shot I have is with you, we ended on bad terms last time, but I can deal with that. But otherwise, I want more money than that. The end. And that's
Do
really what it just felt like, a relationship entirely of convenience, and it became
Mhm.
inconvenient. Like,
Yeah.
wow, what a story! I'm hoping that we're done with this now among Giants fans, and we can talk about like I don't mean you
Oh,
and me. I don't mean you and me. I mean like Giants fans. Like I would like to talk about all the other interesting things that are going on this
it
year. I'm
it's not going to happen.
happy. I'm happy to have the salary out of the backfield. Are
Yeah.
you?
Of course. I mean, it was the absolute worst timing that could happen for Saquon Barkley. I mean, because quite honestly, this team is not ready in their arc to be a champion to have him on the team at that money. And
Correct.
I mean, the Eagles are.
Yes.
I mean, quite frankly, I mean, think about it. Let's think about it logically. If you are a player and you are getting up there in your football age, and like you said, probably your last chance to make money, probably the last chance to really dictate where you can go. Because think about it, when you're getting near the end of your career, you pretty much sign with whoever will take you
Yep.
at a certain point. But this is really his last shot to get his bank and get to dictate, this is where I'm going to play. He's going to get his money. He's going to play for a contender. Um, he's going to play, relatively back home. He went to school at Penn State. So put yourself in Saquon Barkley's shoes. What would you do?
It would be. I don't really know what like pot sweetener there is on the Giants side to make that not a
Well,
smart business decision. Do you know what I
well,
mean?
the Ring of Honor.
Oh,
Duh.
I just it was a no brainer kind of decision
Sure.
for him.
Two things about the way they, from the episode itself, I thought were interesting. And again, little subtle things when you have editorial final say on things. Last week, when we had the conversation between Joe Shane and Saquon's agent, you heard both sides of that conversation on the phone. You heard Shane talking. You heard Barkley talking. You heard the agent talking. This week, you didn't hear the agent. You only heard Joe Schoen talking. So it's interesting what the agent was saying, the tone he was saying it, and why that was, and how come that wasn't, included. Was it something where the agent didn't give permission for it, or just editorial content where the Giants didn't want to, further their narrative along? So I thought that was kind of interesting. The second thing, I hate to say this, but Mara got really old really fast. You know, more than once, I was comparing him to our current president of the United States, just as a guy that's pretty old that kind of wanders into the room, says what he wants to say, maybe not 100% crisp and clear and coherent, and then just wanders off. So I think it's interesting how, and fortunate that if you see the way the Giants are working, that dynamic of Shane and the scouts and player personnel and Dable, Mayer will come in, say his opinion, they nod their head, he leaves, and they go back to work. I am much more grateful our football operations are run that way than a feeble, Al Davis or someone or Jerry Jones still trying to run the organization. So interesting to see, I'll be curious in the next couple of years how Mayer is kind of like position with the team and his involvement altogether really is going forward.
Well, I think when they're winning or doing pretty well, I think that he is less inclined to get his hands dirty, right? Would you get that
Well,
same feeling?
well, I don't think he got his hands dirty at all, even in this when they're losing.
No,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it, but I mean, like, his opinion, I don't think he feels that strongly about, if he feels as though his GM, I get the sense, I have no evidence to back this up, but I get the sense that if he feels as though his general manager is putting a winning product on the field, he just has less emphasis behind his opinion. He'll go out there, say what he wants, and then be like, but you know what you're doing, kind of
I
thing.
think see, that's how I felt he was on these episodes. He kind of walks in and is like, "Yeah, I'll be awake at night if Barkley's an Eagle," and he walks away, and you're like, "All right, well, get some sleeping pills." It wasn't really much of a consideration in any factor of anything with negotiations, like making sure that Mara is happy, and that's
From what
good.
we've seen, anyway. I mean, we don't
Well,
know.
again, that's true. I mean, this is cut by the Giants, but remember who, you know, at the top of the giant food chain is Mara.
Sure.
So
Um, in any case, I feel like the Barkley situation ultimately died down with a fizzle of basically what we already knew. Did you think it was interesting that Mara referenced him specifically as by far the most popular player? Did you find that, I don't know, just to close out the Barkley and Mara thing?
well, he is. I mean, who's second?
No,
Tommy
I would
DeVito.
agree with that. Yeah, probably Dexter Lawrence, right?
I would say Tommy DeVito.
Oh,
Quite
fair
frankly,
enough. Yeah, you
quite
might be.
frankly, Dexter Lawrence, I think is. I think a lot of Giant fans think he's the best player on the team, but we'll do this little
No, you're probably right. Kayvon, I think, is in terms of popularity only,
yeah.
fairly up there. I would say he's a popular Giants
It'll be
player.
interesting when we go to opening day when we count uniforms and we see who are most fans wearing what jersey. I mean, obviously,
Uniforms. I mean,
I think a lot of Barclays will be put in the garbage or just retired to stud until he retires. I mean that's kind of my rule is if I have a jersey of a guy and they get traded or free agents, I don't wear it again until he retires. Then I can bring it back.
well, you could always just get the duct tape and start writing Singletary on the back.
That's Bush. I hate
Is
that.
it?
Yeah, I think it's lame.
Here's why I don't think it's Bush. Jerseys are expensive.
All right. Well, yeah.
If you let's just say last year your mom got you a Barkley jersey on the heels of a great Giants season going into last year, and then you got it and they were terrible all year, and you're like barely got to wear this thing, and then he's gone, and you're like, man, I don't get to wear this at all. I don't have a problem with people doing that personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I just either go get it put different numbers on it or different. I mean, if you're buying a jersey, that's a commitment.
Sure, I agree.
And so
It sounds like you made a bad choice, really.
well, no, I mean it's just things happen. I mean, if you bought a Barkley jersey last year, that's kind of on you
I would agree
because
with that.
you know that he's probably only going to be here one year probably. I mean, the odds of that long-term deal being signed, I thought were pretty slim.
All right,
But
so
if your mom bought it for you, then kudos to your mom for buying you a jersey.
I thought it was let's talk about happy things.
Sure.
The Giants were prime objective here was the offensive line, and that made me happy. There was agreement across the room that the prime objective in free agency, even with all of the Brian Burns trade stuff going all the way back to the first episode, the offensive line was everything that they were worried about first and foremost.
Did you get the sense though that Dable was kind of like had to think about it for a couple? I mean, to me, it should have been like the words should have been still coming out of Dable's mouth, where he should have said offensive line, and he was kind of like, you need to work on the insides.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. That was curious. So like, let's get into so couple of things. First of all, the Giants were they were locked in on getting 3. They had to get 2 is what they said. I think that was Brandon Brown said that. We said we must walk away with 2, but they were really aiming for 3. They wanted Robert Hunt, Jermaine Illuminor, and John Runyon. That's ambitious. That is a huge priority on the offensive line. They got boxed out on Hunt. The expanded salary cap, I think, really threw a lot of their aspirations into a twister. But I thought that a couple of things were interesting is that at one point when Shane was describing Runyon, he was saying next to Thomas. He also mentioned Runyon as like one of the building blocks for the next couple of years. Did not mention Evan Neal in that moment. Not that necessarily means anything, but
I want to bring it up too because I think people say, well, we've been ignoring the offensive line for years. We have not been ignoring the offensive line.
They've been misevaluating it.
It just hasn't worked out. And again, it's too early for JMS. In a rookie playing center, it's a tough thing to do.
In a terrible year.
What's that?
In a terrible year too.
It got progressively worse. I mean, we weren't saying he was terrible right off the get-go. Like
the whole year for the Giants, the offense, it was terrible. It's the worst way to grade anybody anyway.
Oh, I thought you were talking about JMS specifically. Okay, yeah. And Evan Neal has obviously had his problems. But he's also been injured too.
Mm-hmm.
They have tried. I feel like there's been an emphasis on it. It just hasn't panned out through injury or just through misevaluation. So, this to me is just a continuation they're trying to do, and hopefully they get it right at this point. But I don't feel this is like, oh, they're finally getting around to the offensive line. That's not the case.
No, but see, what I think is interesting is that they prioritized free agent additions. So like they got veteran help, they got known quantities on the offensive line. It's not the same as drafting Will Hernandez and Justin Pugh and Evan Neal. Like all those draft investments are a question mark, A, and B, it comes with a learning curve. Like,
well, let's think about it. Let's
Okay.
think about why they did that. I mean, there's 2 reasons.
Because A, I would say is they already drafted a bunch of offensive linemen in the last 2 years.
Well, I was going with A, that we got to keep Daniel Jones upright and healthy, and we don't have time to break in more rookies and go through those growing pains again. This is Daniel Jones' year. He has to stay healthy before we can properly evaluate him if we want to move forward with him or not. So I think they wanted more experience and plug and play guys for right now. And 2, if they make the decision that they are moving on from Daniel Jones and they do draft a quarterback this offseason, that guy's playing next year. And I don't think they want to start all over again with a new quarterback with an offensive line with tons of question marks with young guys that might have sucked their first year and maybe not ready to start. So I think this is an insurance plan for, the probable soft landing of Daniel Jones and the potential immediate insertion of a new quarterback next year, rookie quarterback.
I would say that, and I absolutely. But I just think also when you've already went and drafted a bunch of guys, just more young guys isn't really the answer. You know what I mean? Like, you need a combination of veterans and young guys. And,
you need talent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, like you don't have time for things to pan out. Like Josh Azudu, is certainly someone that I think that, in a couple years be like, wow, this guy undervalued. We didn't think much of him, but now he plays all three interior spots. He steps up when someone's hurt and doesn't miss a
We-
beat. But that hasn't happened yet. We
We're
don't
in
have
such a
time for that shit.
we're in such a weird no man's land right now because we're not. It's not do or die for this coaching staff and this general manager, in spite of what some talking heads might say. And also, the window isn't right now to win a championship. It's like it's not the slow build, but it's like we're it's kind of a necessity to be ready for, again, the Daniel Jones evaluation, the new quarterback thing. So we're in a weird spot. It's like we're not thinking about a championship. We're also not thinking about bottoming out. We're kind of really in a bad place from that perspective.
Well, in either case, I like the priority there.
Of course,
And
absolutely.
I did think so. Yeah, I thought it was interesting the way that Shane described Runyon is next to Thomas. It now looks like, Runyon and Illuminator are swapped.
Hmm.
I think he also mentioned Illuminator more as a tackle and a right. I don't know. The whole offensive line shape up is definitely something in the next coming weeks in training camp that I'm going to keep an eye on, because I think that the shuffle has been a bad idea. But
It's the most important story of the offseason to me, of training
yeah,
camp
I
to
would
me, to be
agree.
very honest. I mean, making sure that Daniel Jones is healthy so he can play, and not just play week one, but be a starter and like no concerns. Some of the other stories are not as interesting to me, but just what is this offensive line going to look like? How are they looking? And have they pulled the plug on the Evan Neal project already, or are they giving him another shot? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, the other thing with the offensive line is just the new coach Brasillo and
Hmm.
how he manages this stuff. The only like the only part of this that's made me feel slightly okay is that Illuminar worked with Brasillo last year. Um, but that's only one piece of the jigsaw puzzle that's smashed into the wrong spot. So I don't know. I feel very on edge about the way that they got the pieces and they've decided to just jumble them, and it's to, I don't know, help Evan
Well,
Neal when it's like, but Jermaine Illuminator could already be Evan Neal. I don't know.
well, a new offensive line coach is going to make his fresh own evaluations. He's not brought in with a mandate from a previous administration to say, this is the positions, these are the guys. He's going to make that evaluation himself. And yeah.
One last thing that I thought was interesting in this episode was Brian Dable's interest in keeping the quarterback room consistent. I don't think it's silly or interesting in the way that was curious. It was just I didn't consider it, and that makes sense. You bring in Drew Lock, he's got to learn the whole system again. Tyrod knows Dable very well, but also he was just in the system last year. They really had him in like their top 6 of guys to keep. Um, and they thought they could get him back around 7 million, and he ended up getting like a $5 million raise to go with the Jets. I also think that the Jets might have. Yeah, I don't know.
I
Did you find it was interesting that Sam Darnold was in the equation as well?
Sam Darnold's like a cockroach, man. He's going to keep getting jobs until he's 46, I think. So,
Yeah, I mean he
and
hasn't been around that long. What the hell are you
I know,
talking
but
about?
it feels like it, doesn't it?
It, it,
Doesn't Sam Darnold feel like he's around for 15 years?
no, it feels like he's been on 5 teams.
I just feel like he's been around forever. I guess that's when you start bouncing around and
Yeah.
you're kind of,
Well, it's like the Jets gave up on him too early. I mean, the Jets did him no favors, gave up on him. And then once that happens, it's like unless you go somewhere and you stick, like you have a great year, you're
yeah.
just like the same thing with Baker Mayfield. Like if he didn't have a great year in Tampa Bay, he
Maybe on
wouldn't
that
he
same,
wouldn't he wouldn't be out of the league. But
maybe
like,
maybe another guy I feel like has been around for 15 years, has been on 9 teams in that same category, whether they've been
right.
around for 5 or 12. It's that this guy's still around in the league. Um, and something that has not been touched on this show, and I don't even think I've even seen him on this show, is Mike Kafka. I
It's
mean,
been mentioned, yeah.
yeah, but like, the Wink Martindale's offseason story was a big story, right? the Kafka, like, what are we doing at Mike Kafka? To me, is an interesting story too, where it sounds like Dable will be calling plays. It sounds like Kafka may have been gone and is back, but he's still here. Does he have? It's just interesting that they're not even really touching that story at all, and we barely even seen him on the show.
Yeah, I would have thought that we'd seen and heard from him by now. My thought is that if we see him on the show, it will have to do with Daniel Jones' recovery from injury, and a more inside look on that sort of thing as we get to like the mandatory minicamp and the post draft stuff. You know what I mean? Where there's some action on the field. I think then we might have, and by that I mean I don't mean like the fucking candid camera, Kafka's in the room talking to Dable. I mean like the one-on-one interview camera sitting down with Mike Kafka. I believe that's when we'll see. I don't think that they're going to just sneak him in. He's either not going to be in it or he'll be more focused in a particular episode where he can talk about strictly his relationship with Daniel Jones, the offense, and moving the ball, that kind of thing. Like drawing up plays, what guys do, that kind of thing.
I would have thought maybe, his opinion about Saquon would have been interesting.
But it would have been interesting, but I just, yeah.
I mean, like, the most important people in the room, really, I mean, talking about your biggest player on offense would be your offense coordinator, your head coach, and your GM. I do have a suggestion about this show altogether, and here's what I would do to make this show better. I think instead of this offseason, version of it, instead of just focusing on one team, I would have all 32 of the GM rooms with those robo cameras and just record everything that happens in all 32 of those rooms, because a lot of these stories with Shane, the Saquon stuff or who he's talking to other GMs, we're only hearing one side of the story. And I think it would be so much interesting if we heard, and they can edit it to a way where you're hearing both sides of a conversation, both sides of a negotiation. I mean, it obviously every team would have to agree to it. Maybe not every team agrees, so maybe you get 15 or 16 of them.
Yeah, I was going to say you're ambitious. I would say also that's just so much information, dude.
That's okay, but I mean, you have all this content, and you don't have to, keep it all, and you're just running. It's not like you have a cameraman in there. It's not like,
well, I mean,
you're filming the Let It Be sessions or anything. And
you're thinking the American public does not have nearly the attention span for even a quarter of that. I think if you had two teams, you're already struggling to keep an audience.
But you keep what actually is on Hard Knocks to like what these main storylines are. The Barkley negotiations, the war room before the draft. I don't know, it's high level things, but you have all this other content too that you're creating. You can't put that as bonus stuff that you throw up on HBO Max. Bonus content you can't throw on NFL Network. Bonus content you can't have on the individual websites.
Well, it's a cost analysis thing.
Yeah. Or even forget even the extra footage, just like having the ability to get both sides of stories.
I mean, I'm on board. I understand why it will never happen. Or if it would be like the HBO budget for all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones would go into like one off-season training camp.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have like these rooms with robo cameras and something, I mean,
the editing process is massive, and the narration and all that stuff. You already got Liev Schreiber doing all this.
It's true.
Here's my one editing note, and I don't think that this is going to have any. I don't think that this necessarily has a consequential thing, but everything that's on the TVs in the background, do not take it to heart. And just because the people are watching it doesn't mean that's what they're watching. The only time, and this is actually how I knew for sure I was right, the only time that when Mike Garafolo is talking about GM Joe Schoen having a stressful day and he perks up and increases the volume, you can see a huge difference in the TV brightness from every other shot. Yeah. So every other shot with the TV in the background, when there's stuff on the TV, I'm like 99% sure it's just digitally added in post.
I completely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm excited for next week's episode because we're talking about the draft and moving around in the draft. I know that the teaser showed Brian Dable jumping at the idea of moving up for Jaden Daniels. I don't know why people are like, whoa, because yeah, I would have traded up for Jaden Daniels too, and
Yeah.
Caleb Williams and Drake May. All three of them I would have traded up for. So that doesn't mean that he wanted Jaden Daniels more than Drake May. It doesn't mean that that he can't stand Daniel Jones. He was asked a question. You're okay with trading up for him? I would. Okay.
Yeah. Duh.
I mean, like, it could be scintillating. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But to me, people are like, whoa, he was going to move up for Jaden Daniels. Like, yeah, I was saying that in February. I would move up for Jaden Daniels. What the hell?
Yeah. But insert the Kardashian music. Dun-dun.
Yeah. But I am, nevertheless, despite that tease and whatever, I'm excited for next week's episode. That's more in my wheelhouse. This is interesting to me because I don't have the capacity to deal with what Joe Schoen deals with. Like, I just don't have the stress management to handle watching the clock tick and not hearing back and seeing guys go off the board. That just gets under my skin. I can't do that.
Yeah. This format of the show is my favorite one. The very early years of Hard Knocks, when they first started covering, the Ravens, where I really loved that. The show became a cartoon of itself. The in-season one I never got into because I just frankly don't care about the teams they're covering. I like this. I like this off-season show. I think it's, you know, it's scratching an itch I have for the NFL that I would probably watch this even if it was a different team.
I completely agree with you, but I also think that you and I are a niche market, so this may not take off, but I hope that it does because I just find it interesting. And also when it's other teams, we're gonna have to be prepared for this, but like there's a lot of potential for like egg on your face.
What do you mean?
I don't know, when it's a training camp thing, I mean, it feels a lot like, there's always potential for egg on your face whenever it's like inside access and behind the scenes footage and conversations and stuff like that. But a lot of it is largely based on players' ability, availability, right? This is more like you're posturing for players in free agency and you're taking gamble like strategies, and like there's a very good chance that strategically everything that you said on air and in front of everyone just totally falls on its face.
Well, I mean, it's no different than preparing for the regular season during preseason. All of a sudden, you suck.
I mean, I guess, but I mean, like
4-13 or whatever.
When you make like a decision like, well, running backs just aren't worth it. Just as an example, I mean, this could be anything, but like when you make that, and then let's just say Devin Singletary is absolutely terrible. Saquon Barkley goes off. You know what I mean? It just.
Well, that's the beauty of sports. That's why we watch sports.
I agree with you.
We don't know.
I agree with you, but the way that will be consumed and digested by the public will be that this guy's an idiot. And believe me, when it's another team doing this and they say something I don't agree with, I'm probably going to call him an idiot too.
I would say the majority of Americans have the attention span of a gnat and will have long forgotten about Hard Knocks when we get to the Giants being, 3-11. And also, everybody expects the Giants to be 3-11 anyway. So it's really no. I don't think so. This isn't a show. Hard Knocks isn't a binge show 6 months from now. You may binge it now and watch.
It's very true.
I'm going to watch these 6 episodes over a Saturday afternoon and get caught up. But I'm not going to go back and say, God, season 8 was great. I'm going to go back and check out what the first Dave Campo year of the Cowboys. That the show just goes away.
Speaking of the Giants being 3-11, let's get into next 3 pens and pencils.
It's because they're playing the Cowboys.
They sure are. On Thanksgiving, November 28th at 4:30, they will be at the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium for the afternoon game. What say you, Cranky Fan?
This is where, it's so quick to say, here's a pen and let's just get this out of the way. But Cowboys tend to underachieve on Thanksgiving quite a bit.
Definitely true.
And, the Giants always underachieve in prime time. I consider this a primetime game. This is the first time I'm going to start to say, which I'm not supposed to do on this. It depends on our health. But I think if we are relatively healthy at this point in the season, I might go with the surprising win in pencil. But if we're anywhere near the banged up we are, and actually we didn't even talk about this, the injuries are already starting with the Giants. Uh, this could be a definite loss in pen. So I'm going to hedge a little bit and say, by the slightest of pencils, we're going to sneak away with a win here because, again, the short week. Um, Dallas is, their reputation is not what they really are on Thanksgiving, and I think we sneak away with a surprising win and one of the biggest upsets the Giants have all year.
I can follow that logic. I'm going to sit there and say that the Cowboys are not usually the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. In fact, sometimes they shit the bed gloriously.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that the Giants have ever won on Thanksgiving. We don't do well against the Cowboys. I mean,
the last time probably was that LT game against the Lions back in '81.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Giants don't do well either, and we're already starting from a worse spot roster wise. I just can't, in good faith, give this a win. It's our second Thursday game of the year, which is annoying.
I really feel bad for the American public that has to watch so many Giant games in prime time. Although this year it is not as bad as it has been, but
I think, is this the least watched? No, I don't know which Thanksgiving game gets the least amount of eyeballs.
I think the nighttime game.
Yeah, I could see that.
I
People
think
driving home at that time.
People are kind of done with the holiday. It's been a long day. I think well, I would guess actually that the early game is because once dinner time happens around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I mean, I have a cool family. You have a cool family. I'm sure the TV is on while you're watching, over dinner, but I think a lot of families no TV during Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, look, man, let's be real. You and I are in the same family, so they've given up on you and I a long time ago. And if I'm going to watch the game, I'm going to watch the game.
Probably. And if it's a Giant game, forget it.
Yeah, they're not going to even argue. They're not going to say a word.
Get the snack tables out. We're watching in the TV room.
This is a loss in pen for me. I want to say it's a win. I'm hoping it's a win, especially because it's Thanksgiving. It's later in the year. It's the second matchup, so it's good to close the series with a win, even if you lost the first one. Especially if it's on Thanksgiving. It's such a national embarrassment when it's the Cowboys for some reason. The Lions routinely lose on Thanksgiving for decades.
Well, they've blown for decades.
Exactly, and it's well, another Thanksgiving in the books, but when Dallas loses, it's oh my god. So
hey, let's do a crystal ball extra here. It's the last Thursday in November. Are the Giants as banged up as they were in 2023 at that time, in better health, overall health, or in worse health?
overall, I mean, at this time last year, other than the quarterback, I think I don't know. I guess I can't say that. Your right tackle was hurt. Your left tackle is playing hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But and your quarterback's out. But who else was hurt at this time last year?
Wasn't a cornerback or two hurt?
Dory?
Is Dory hurt during this?
I don't think so. I think this is when they started to get healthier, and it's one of the reasons. That's what I said. The right tackle was out. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Left tackle's playing hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterback is out. So I mean, it's not a ton of injuries, but it's three of the most important. That's a hard question for me to answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We may have 5 or 6, quote unquote, less important players that are hurt. And blow the number out of the water, but it'd be less consequential.
But Tommy DeVito is almost like playing with 9 guys.
But I think you could make the argument that the reason Tommy DeVito performed better than Daniel Jones in some of the instances is if you're comparing, he had Andrew Thomas in front of him. Yeah. Whereas Daniel Jones kind of didn't for most of the time that he was playing.
Right, that's true.
So I that's what I mean. It's difficult. I would say, I don't know. It's hard to say because I want to even be well, I don't anticipate Daniel Jones being out for that long again. I can't
Well,
say that again about Andrew Thomas. Like, I cannot give the health okay on Andrew Thomas. It's the one check mark I can't necessarily give.
oh, isn't that scary? That arguably our two best players on offense, you just can't count on them being healthy all the
Well, I
time.
mean, I don't think you can count on any quarterback being healthy if the left tackle isn't healthy. Daniel Jones has not missed a lot of time. Um, he's been banged up. He has had serious injuries, but overall in his time here, I don't. He's played hurt. He's more than willing to play hurt. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I don't know. Maybe that was a stupid statement, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
I gotta
What's your gut feeling?
my gut feeling says we're actually for once going to be relatively healthy this year, and I think if we actually outkick our coverage with our record, let's say we're hanging around 500 around Thanksgiving time, I think it's going to be more of a product that the roster has been healthy more than wow these guys are playing fantastic, because I think injuries are a problem in this league all over the place. And I think more and more it's the team that's the healthiest as you get into December is the team that, can catapult into the playoffs and do damage. And I think this year, I just have this little feeling in my stomach. And again, it probably is gas, but we're going to stay relatively healthy. And I think because of that, we're going to have a better record than maybe what our talent load is on the team. That's a little crystal ball. We can go back to it in 12 weeks when we're completely banged up and look like an idiot as usual. But let me throw it
Um,
out there.
yeah. I don't know. Moving into week 14, at home versus the New Orleans Saints. It's a 1:00 game on a Sunday, thankfully, December 8th. Cranky Fan, Saints Giants.
I'd like to say I'd be coming back from Atlanta from an SEC championship game, but unless I'm going to see Georgia and Bama, I'm probably not going to be there. So I will be there. I think it'll be one of the first times I'm actually there for a tailgate because the way the schedule is this year. Um, this uh, this New Orleans team, a lot of names they picked up in the offseason. I don't know how good a lot of them are. I mean, they got guys like Chase Young, uh, Jonathan Abram. Uh, you know, I don't know. Willie Gay. Is this team really any good? I think I'm gonna put us in a winning pencil again. And I think I'm actually, Grump, am I starting to put us on a little bit of like a either a winning streak or like a little trend with the Giants around this time of the year?
Well, I mean, you've got 2 wins in a row. I don't know. I don't remember how you ended last week. I have it written down, but
I think I have this, and I think that might be kind of part of my little. I'm taking a little bit of a bold thing that we're going to be relatively healthy. I think we're actually going to win this game again. I think at this point, people are going to be like, "Hmm, are the Giants going to keep Daniel Jones next year?" Where I think right now the consensus is like they're not bringing him back next year. But I'm feeling a little optimism in my picks here, and I think this is one of those games where you need to win. Just be like, it's not going to be a terrible year. This might be a halfway. Give me a little bit of hope going into December. So I'm going to say a win in pencil.
yeah, I'm gonna say that this is a loss in pencil. But it's one of those things. This is one of those games where it's like they should win this if they want to be relevant. They need to win this game. Just
Hmm.
looking at rosters, and
Right.
I don't think it's like I don't think it's a bad game. I just think it's one of those games that we're super pissed when we're leaving. You and I. Like it's
It's
just
it,
where it's like it was in our hands and it was like a collection of this, that, and the other thing. If these three things happen differently, this game's in the bag. And
you're talking about a classic losers lose game.
yeah, and we're good for one a year, easy. I mean,
Oh, sure.
32 teams are good for one of those a year.
Everybody, I mean, one of those a year is not losers lose when you just like, yep, that's our season. That's the 2024 Giants. That's when it's losers lose. And I think what you're saying is losing this game is that, yep, this is us.
Kinda, yeah. A lot of this depends on Derek Carr, and Spencer Rattler and like whatever goes on there, right? Like if Derek Carr, not trying to inflate Spencer Rattler here, but if Derek Carr disappoints, I have no idea how much longer they're going to keep that going. You know what I mean?
Don't they have Peterman too?
Maybe they still have Taysom Hill too.
Yeah.
Peterman, come on though, that's not even.
Hey, they had Taysom Hill throwing a lot more than anybody else would. So
I think they also have Jake Hayner, who Fresno State.
So.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think I don't know. They have a sturdy base there. They have a team that could give us trouble. Like they're not garbage, but I do agree that they've kind of just picked up some names to fill out the roster.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, like you look at the roster side by side, and it's kind of who the hell are we? So I look at this one as the late year kind of like God, and we've fallen on like a little bit of a slide here. Moving to week 15 at home again, this time against the Baltimore Ravens, December 15th, 1:00. Cranky Fan, Ravens Giants.
This is by the third quarter. I think we're like talking about have you ever gone to see the Rockettes for Christmas, or what's the Christmas party going to be like this year? This to me is a loss in pen.
This actually might be the Christmas party game.
What's the date?
15th.
No. The following week is an away game. That is the Christmas party game.
The 22nd. Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this will not be a party for us at MetLife. I think.
Well, this will be a hot chocolate game.
Oh, for sure.
This is at the third quarter when things are getting out of hand. It's like, hey, you want a hot chocolate? You want cookie maybe?
Right in the middle of a drive. It's like 2nd and 7 from the 37-yard line. You're like, you want a hot chocolate? Okay, and you just get up and go. Well, the good thing is,
I don't think it's that. I think it's one of those like, 60-yard bomb just happened, didn't it? All right, I'm getting hot chocolate. You want something?
No, I just feel like it's just general apathy. It's like right in the middle of a drive. I look at you like, you ready for another hot chocolate? And you're like, yeah. And it's not like we're walking over anybody else in our aisle because it'll be half empty by that time anyway. So, yeah.
I have this as a loss in pen. I just
same.
I don't think as highly of Baltimore as I think the national consensus does. I think it's a lot of flash and not a ton of substance, and it's at least been that way the last couple of years. Not. I mean, when the chips were on the table, when they needed to win games, they didn't. That's what I mean. Like, obviously, they were good enough to win 13 games a year, stuff like that. They're not. It's not just flash, but.
Well, let's say Derrick Henry's 70% of what he was before.
I don't even think that matters.
Oh, really? I mean, just the combination of that, having a solid running game along with Lamar Jackson, I just think that's a lot of problems.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, like the fact that he's only 70% of what he was. I mean, if you said, let's say Derrick Henry is 50% of what he was, it's still a problem, I think.
Okay. Okay. Even if he's 50% of what he was too, I think it's
If they can master using Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in the zone read, I think that you need to stack the box against Derrick Henry. And if you it's a pick your poison. Is Derrick Henry going to run through 4 guys, or is Lamar Jackson going to run around 10?
Well, let me ask you, how much zone read has Derrick Henry?
I don't know.
In his career, I don't feel like he has ever.
No, I mean, it's like one of those things at Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill was really just not a running threat.
Right.
And like I know that he was with Mariota, and he sort of kind of is, but like even so, he's not a running threat the same way that Lamar Jackson is.
And also, you might have been a running quarterback, but you didn't fear his arm nearly.
Exactly.
Mariota,
so I mean,
like you with Lamar Jackson.
You would just stack the box anyway.
Yeah.
This is the Derrick Henry to Baltimore thing is probably the smartest thing if they can make it work properly.
Sure. And how much did they pay a lot for him even?
I don't remember, but that is a running back that I would have paid money for.
2 years, $16 million.
Yeah, I would have paid that. Honestly, I know he's more the pure running back than Saquon is, but he runs between the tackles.
Yeah.
And he gets yards after contact. Like, I know that they're not flashy, like spins out of a tackle, reverses the field and whatever. I mean, to me,
You don't need that. You don't need that on
he
this
just
team.
runs through 3 people. Like,
Yeah.
good enough.
Get the first down, will you, kid?
Yeah. I don't like this game for us. This is a very, very obvious loss in Penn. This might even be a leave early game for us.
Is this the one where people really start getting pissed off? Are we there?
Giants fans?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Is this
like pissed off in what regard?
just enough already? Enough already with losing, enough already with this regime. Like, if let's say they
I would say that that's the week before.
if they lose to
I don't even know if they have to lose. They could just play poorly against New Orleans.
oh, no. If they win, nobody's complaining.
I guess that's true.
We listen. This fan base isn't that fickle where now they're complaining about wins. No way. I think this could be the potential of a game
Unless
where
Tommy DeVito is the quarterback, then winning's not okay.
yeah, right. But I could see this as something if we're kind of meandering along, even if the record's
But
like
it's so silly because Baltimore is
I'm
so
not-
good.
I'm not
I agree
saying
with
it's
you.
rational, but I
Yeah.
mean, like, is this one where it's just like, when you get your ass kicked,
Yeah, that's true.
that's kind of like, if you just lose, like losers lose games, I don't think that's calling for major changes. It's like they got to get better. But when you just like get your ass kicked and it's non-competitive, like some of those games last year, like we're not even competitive in these games, and there's understandable reasons why, and nobody was calling anybody's head. But things like that are where that's where people come out with the
Well, sure. It's
the spirit.
expensive to go to a game. You know what I mean? You look forward to it all year, and if you're not even competitive, it's not even a game.
Yeah, but
You're gonna be
mostly,
pissed.
I'm talking about just people like on Twitter and people like and calling up sports radio. And the majority of those people aren't paying the money and going to games. They're just they're fans and
That's true, but they don't
they
sound
complain.
all that different from the people in the crowd at the stands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we hear the same shit at the stands that we do on the fan.
But I think this is a loss that's kind of like, I think Britt Dable needs to go, which may not be completely irrational, but I think this is the type of game you start hearing that stuff.
The things that end up coming true are usually said by the irrational people first. So. That's what I mean. I mean, like, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Next week, we will have another Hard Knocks episode to recap. We will have some training camp information to go over, and we will have our final 3 games to predict with pens and pencils, week 16, 17, and 18. So be sure to follow and like and subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. We're on Twitter as well at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and at Just Giants Pod. So be sure to follow us there as well, and we'll see you all next time. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.